Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the School of Personal Finance. We all want to be rich. We all want to be millionaires. We don't want to have to worry about money month in and month out. But in order to get there, you need to know your numbers cold. So in this video, I'm going to show you 15 numbers that you need to be tracking to make sure that you're on the right path to reaching financial independence. Let's get to it. All right, so before I start, if you like videos on personal finance and investing and just trying to become great with money, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I'm putting out new videos at least once a week and I'm just getting started over here. And make sure you stay to the end because the last few items are things that most people are not tracking out there, except for wealthy people. All right, the first number that you need to track, which might be the most important number, it's how much life costs you each and every month. How much money do you spend every month? And you'd be surprised how big of a difference this makes once you get into retirement. When I run financial plans for people, the probability of success is so drastically different for somebody who is spending $8,000 a month compared to somebody who's spending $5,000 a month. So it makes a big difference, and you need to know your numbers. You need to know how much it actually costs you month in and month out to just get by and survive. And I created a PDF document that you could go over to schoolofpersonalfinance.com, enter your email address, and I'll send it to you so that you could track all of these numbers. The second number that you need to know, which most people do, is your net take-home pay. So now it's interesting, if you look at your paycheck, you have your gross number and then you have your net number. It's also good to learn what's in between that gap of the two. Where does the money go before it gets to that net number? Like you might have 401k deductions coming out of there, you might have some health benefits, some other benefits that you might have if you have like group life insurance, things like that. Your taxes, your FICA taxes, state and federal taxes, but it's good to know what's in between there, between that gross income and that net take home. So now the third number you should know is how big of a check can you write if I gave you like a week to come up with the money? So this is your liquidity. How liquid are you? How much reserves do you have? And I don't want you using like retirement accounts where you'd have to pay a 10% penalty to get your hands on the money, or credit card advances where it's gonna cost you, 30% plus a fee to get that money. You could use like home equity lines of credits or low interest revolving credit lines that you have. But for the most part, it should be cash. It should be money that you have in savings and checking. How much do you have where you could actually write a check a week from now? And if you go back to the first thing that we talked about, how much it costs you to live every month, this number should be about 5 times that. So if it costs you $5,000 a month to live, you should have about $25,000 that you have easy access to, just in case you lose your job, you have an emergency. You should have about 5 times that net take-home pay accessible to you. The fourth number that you should know is how much money you owe everybody in the world. And now you should break this number down. You should break it down between short-term revolving debt like credit cards, maybe student loans, car loans, things along those lines, and then your long-term debt, which would be like a mortgage. And you should also have the interest rate written down next to each of these debts that you have. So for example, on a mortgage, if it's at 4%, write that down next to it. For your credit cards, it's good to do a little research and see how much you're actually paying on these credit cards or student loans or any other types of debts or loans that you have out there. But you want to list it all out and you want to know how much you owe the world out there. I included a little worksheet in the PDF that you could go download where you could list it all out. Kind of like a Debt Snowball worksheet where you could list it all out with the interest rate next to it. And if you haven't seen my video about getting out of debt and the Debt Snowball, go back to my channel and check out some of those videos that I've done in the past. And then number 5 would be how much are all your assets worth? So assets are things like, the cash that you have in the banks, your retirement accounts, your home, your car, basically anything that you'd be able to sell over the next few months, for money. Now, don't include things like your furniture or like items in your house. You could include expensive jewelry that you have in there as well. Basically, all of the assets that you own, how much are they all worth? And then the 6th number that you should know is if you hit the reset button. If you took all those assets that you just added up and you sold them all, and then you took that money and you paid off all the debt that we talked about a few steps earlier, what would you be left with? If you just did a life reset and you sold all your crap, you paid off all your debts, what would you be left with? How much money would you have left? That number is called your net worth. If you haven't seen the video that I did a few months back about how to calculate your net worth, go and check that one out as well. All right, so number 7 is how much money do you have saved for retirement? So this would include any money that you have in your 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs. It could also include other long-term investments, like if you own rental real estate property or anything else that you're saving for retirement. How much do you have altogether? And then number 8 would be how much money do you save for retirement each and every year? So how much are you contributing to your 401ks, IRAs? And you could include your employer match. So how much money is actually going into retirement accounts during the year for your future retirement? So for example, if you make 100 grand and you put 10% into your 401k, that's $10,000 per year. And if your employer matches half of that, if they're putting $5,000 in for you, then altogether you have $15,000 going in for retirement during the year. All right, so now for number 9, it's how much money do you need to have saved for retirement, and at what age are you going to retire? So this one's a little bit trickier to figure out, how much money you actually need in order to retire. So let's make the assumption that you figured out that it costs you $5,000 a month to live, and it's going to be that way in retirement as well. So $5,000 a month, that means you need $60,000 a year of income in order to retire comfortably. And let's make the assumption that you're going to have $20,000 in Social Security income. So now that leaves $40,000 that you need in order to live comfortably month to month in retirement. So how much would you need to have saved in order to generate that much income? And there's a very well-known rule called the 4% withdrawal rate, where that number is shown to be able to, you could pull out 4% a year from your retirement accounts, and it will hopefully last you no matter how long you live. So if we do the simple math and we say you need $40,000 a year, we just divide that by 4%, and that would show that you would need to have $1 million saved in order to retire. And then the 10th number that you want to know is the percentage of your retirement assets you have invested for growth. Now this makes a tremendous difference. If you invest very conservatively and you have money in very safe investments that have low growth rates like 2 or 3%, like bonds and savings accounts, and you're not going to retire for a long time, it could really limit the amount that you're going to have once you reach retirement. So if you're invested heavily in the stock market, say you have 90% of your retirement assets in stocks or 80% of your retirement assets in stocks, then you could use a growth rate in the 7% range, and that could be very realistic. Where if you're not invested for growth and you're in assets that are going to give you a 2 or 3% return, you're going to end up with a lot less money when it comes time to retirement. And then for number 11, we kind of take all these pieces together and try to calculate what you'll actually have at the pace that you're currently going. So if you said, I have $100,000 in my 401ks and IRAs and my retirement accounts, and I'm saving $10,000 a year, and I'm invested for growth, so I could use 7% as a reasonable growth rate through the years until I get to retirement. Then we could go ahead and figure out how much will you actually have at retirement. Again, it's just an assumption, but it gives you an idea if you're on pace. And then you could go and compare that number to what you figured out you actually need for retirement in the previous step. So it's great to know how much you actually need for retirement, and then are you on pace doing that? What are you currently doing? What are your projections for how you're currently saving right now? These numbers are important to know. And in next week's video, I'm going to talk about compounding interest. I'm going to pull out a calculator and I'll show you some of these numbers and how to calculate, exactly what I just described, what you'll actually have in the future based on these assumptions. All right, so moving on. So number 12 is what percentage of your big goals have you already tackled? So some examples of big goals besides retirement would be like saving for your daughter's wedding or saving for your kid's college education. So if you know that 15 years from now, ballpark, your daughter might be getting married and you want to save $30,000 for a wedding, who knows what it will cost at that point. How are you tracking towards that? Are you actually on track to save for that? Because you have to be saving for it. You can't just wait until the day comes and then say, well, I'm going to take out a loan or, not be prepared for it. So you want to be tracking towards these goals. And the same thing with, your kid's college education. Come up with a number that you would love to be able to contribute to your kids going to college. And how are you tracking towards that? What percentage of that do you have saved, and how much longer do you have to go until that day actually comes? And then number 13 would be, how much income would you have if you just stopped working today? For most people, the answer is 0. Maybe it would last a few months if you had to go through savings, if you had to take early withdrawals from retirement accounts. But the way you build this up are through rental properties, through passive income streams, through dividends with mutual funds or stocks or ETFs. So it's a good number to know, and if you're like most people where it's 0, start thinking about ways you could move that needle a little bit, ways that you could start generating an income without having to work for it. Now, number 14 is a number that we don't really like to think about. It's how much are you worth dead? It's an important number, especially if there are people that depend on you financially. So if you were to unexpectedly pass away, how much money is getting left to your loved ones, to the people behind who are going to be suffering emotionally and financially? And hopefully that's a big number. If you don't have life insurance and there are people that depend on you, if you're married, you have kids, and you have obligations, I hope that you have enough life insurance to leave them in a good place, because emotionally, obviously they're going to be suffering. You don't want them to be suffering tremendously financially as well. And I also have a video that I did a few months back about how you calculate how much life insurance you need. So go check that one out as well. But write that number down on a piece of paper, just so it sinks in and you realize that if something were to happen to you, that you might be leaving them in a really crappy situation. And then number 15 is another number that is zero for a lot of people. And that is, how many people do you have in your circle of trust that you could depend on, that you could go to for advice, for guidance? So for wealthy people, they have an accountant, they have an attorney, they might have some kind of business coach, they might have a financial advisor. They have people that they could turn to generate ideas, to shoot things off of, to try to help them to grow in life. But for a lot of people, they depend and rely on themselves, and that limits your growth. It's great to have trusted partners, people that are smarter than you, that could help you to move on to that next stage and to really grow in life. So how many people are in your crew? Hopefully it's not zero. All right, everybody, that is it for this one. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. Go check out schoolofpersonalfinance.com. Download this free PDF so that you could track your own numbers. Make sure to go back and watch the old videos that I did on all of these topics so you can learn more about those. I will see you again next week in the next episode. Thanks a lot. Bye.